since you had attended in my stead to the meeting administration had. So I don't know if you have that information available tonight or not, but.
Because all I have is the sign-in sheet that I got from Linda Benson regarding the February 13th meeting.
This is what it is.
Okay.
Did you send that out, Mark?
Well, I don't have it electronic, Diane. I have a copy of it that I got in the meeting with the mayor.
Good evening. This is the mayor.
Hello, Mayor. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, we have just a minute or two. Diane, had you heard from Mr. Ferret? Since he's the other part of, oh, you know what? I see him joining us now. Hello, Jim. Jim, you're going to need to unmute.
There you go. Hi there.
I apologize, but I do not have that, Linda.
Okay, well, we can certainly get that out at the end of the meeting or tomorrow. I'm sure the sheriff will be going over much of what is in that overview with us this evening. So it's not an imperative, it's just nice to have it in a written format.
And who do we have present for the independent? Steve, are you back? Steve?
I don't see independent. There's just says independent.
Steve Grazier?
Yes, I'm listening on the phone line.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And who is Randall Irwin? Concerned citizen?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, I see that we have reached 5:30, so in the essence of time, I thought we might want to begin. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for the Police and Fire Committee meeting. This meeting was called for the sole purpose of educating our committee as well as council as a whole, or those that have wanted to join us this evening, on how animal control is currently being handled within our city as we speak, and how as it has been since we have engaged the services of the dog warden. Myself, as the chairman of this committee, as well as Mr. Ferret and Mr. Lombardi, thank you for allowing us to get this conversation resurrected again. We had been down this path once previously, a few times previously, but once more recently. So I'm very glad that we've been able to get those on the line this evening that hopefully will be able to shed some light on our current situation. Diane, I would like you to confirm those, with all of us, those that we have asked to join us this evening and those that are currently on our call. I didn't hear Chief Moser as being one of them that has added to the call, so I wanted to confirm that he was here, as well as for the other members to know who all was invited this evening.
Okay. According to my attendance sheet here, I have Linda Littman as chairperson, Claudette Eisnick, Blaine Reisner, Mark Lombardi, Nancy Halter, George Meyer, Major Stantz, Jimmy Johnson, Josh McCloy, Mayor Catazera Perry, Jim Ferret, Barb Sylvester, Randall Irwin, Jill Creamer, Ed Lewis, Mike Gregg, Megan Sterrett, and Chief Moser. I do not have present someone from Stark Parks, and I do not have anyone present from the Humane Society. And we also have Justin Richard, our law director.
Okay, and I'm sorry, again, Chief Moser was invited and had confirmed with you, if I'm not mistaken,
Yes,
but he's
Yes,
not on this call.
he is on the call.
He's on the call. Wonderful. Thank
Chief
you.
Moser's on the call.
I just wanted to make sure. Okay, now we had also received confirmation that Stefan Etchlonger, I believe, from Stark Parks, was he not
I
able?
don't see him. I don't see them on the call.
Okay, so Stark County Humane Society, Jackie was invited and did not get back to you. And now Stark Parks Wildlife Center, the Stefan Eschlonger, confirmed, but is not on the call.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. What I thought we would start with is certainly the overview from the Stark County Dog Warden Division. And, I know that this might have been information that was discussed previously, but I thought it was very important for all of us to know, not only our committee members, but council as a whole, to know how the sheriff's office through the Dog Warden Division is handling our current canine calls. And we've all been pretty clear that these are, that the canine issues are those that are currently handled by the sheriff. Sheriff and CJ, would you be able to begin with your overview?
Sure, Linda, thank you. This is Sheriff Meyer. Our daily operations at the Stark County Dog Shelter are, our hours of operation are Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Now, we are there a little bit before that, but it's not open to the public because we're cleaning kennels. We have 1 full-time and 3 part-time canine technicians that work there. We clean, feed, and care for the dogs in the shelter, and we also take care of adoption, redemption, and general services. Now, that may have been altered a little bit with the COVID-19, but pretty much that's our daily operations. We have medical veterinary service contract where we have 2 full-time vet techs and 1 part-time licensed vet. We perform all medical procedures there on for the care of the dogs that are in the shelter. We have 2 full-time dog shelter deputies. These deputies are available usually Monday through Friday, but they're available for call out on the weekends as well. Their normal response is Monday through Saturday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m., but that is flexible. All Stark County deputies, road deputies, and additional other deputies have received additional training on ORC 955 related to dog regulations and enforcement and response, and respond to calls on a 24/7 rotating basis. Training was made available at all police agencies on April 2nd of 2019. Here's a little bit of what we do, Linda. We enforce Ohio Revised Code 955 on dog licensing. That's one of our primary functions. We manage the dog licensing in the county. Dogs running at large. Our dog shelter is a 24/7 drop-off facility for police. So if your police agency has a stray dog or running a large dog that they want to drop off, there is a facility for them to do that. We have provided temporary dog crates to police agencies who agreed to house the crates in their police facility. I don't think Massillon participates in that program. We enforce 3707, 48 of the rabies regulation, which is really in cooperation with the county and local health departments. That's on dog bites related to rabies. We investigate dangerous or vicious dog bites in conjunction with the local health department and with the local police agencies throughout the county. Here's a little bit of what we don't do. We don't investigate abuse or neglect of animals within a municipal corporation. Excuse me. We don't investigate barking or nuisance dogs within a municipal corporation. We don't retrieve a dog when the owner is known or identified. That's key. Under the law, we're not permitted to do that. We do not recover a dog from arrest. For example, if there's an arrest made in a home and everybody's removed from the house and there are dogs in the house, we do not recover those dogs from an arrest because there's a known owner. That would be the Humane Society. We do not recover dogs from an eviction, and we do not recover a dog when the owner no longer wants to care for the dog. Again, some of those would fall under the Humane Society. I know they're not on the call tonight. That's kind of the long and the short of it, but I certainly will take any questions.
Thank you, Sheriff. I do have just a couple of questions. Could you share with us the number of calls that you take from the city of Massillon? And second question would be, what types of calls are you experiencing?
One second.
Okay.
I don't have the exact number. The call volume is not extremely high. In this county-wide, it's not extremely high. But specifically to the city of Massillon, maybe Chief Moser would be in a better position to answer that from the CAD if he has it available tonight. But we can get you that information for sure. I think the second part of the question was the types of calls. Was that
Yes.
it?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Pretty much the types of calls are just what we identified. Animals running at large, unlicensed animal, that type of call is what we've been able to respond to.
Okay, I just have a couple more questions, and certainly if anyone else has questions, Mr. Therrett or Mr. Lombardi, you are certainly welcome to ask those questions. But I guess I would say, you had mentioned that there was a training that was offered from the sheriff's office to all of the surrounding police departments. Do we know why Massillon was not either included in that or decided to take that training? And certainly, Chief, if you'd like to answer that question, you're welcome to also.
The first part of that, the training was on April 2nd. And actually, I think there were a couple different training sessions that either that day or that week, I don't recall now. This was last year, a year ago.
Mhm.
And so let me have Major Stance kind of explain how that went out to all the police agencies.
So we sent it out to all the police agencies in the county that has law enforcement that covers and invited them to that training. It was an overview, more of what we do and things that we can do to help police agencies with dog calls. I am not sure. Again, Chief Moser might have to answer that question. I don't know if they weren't available. I don't know why, but they weren't. They were invited though.
And in addition to that, I think we sent out some information, packets of information to all the chiefs. And so some of that information might have been handled internally. Again, you'd have to check with the chief on that.
Okay, Chief, since we have you on the line, would you be able to answer that question? Was there a reason why Massillon did not take advantage of that training?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
This was a while back, so I can't remember any of the particulars, but like the sheriff said, we did get a handout of everything that was covered in that meeting. We have a pretty good understanding of it. There really were no questions at that point as to, what the sheriff or the dog warden is doing, and familiar with, our responsibilities as far as any dog calls.
Okay, another question might be, since there was also crates that were offered, I guess I'm looking at the, what we do list. and it included not only the training, but also providing a crate or crates for the police agencies themselves, so that if there were dogs that were running astray and could be corralled, they could either be housed temporarily for an owner to come claim them, or at a more convenient time taken over to the dog warden. So I'm curious as to why the decision was made not to also participate in the getting the crates.
Hey, Linda, just real quick on that. That was before the sheriff's office took over, is when those crates were made available. And I know some of the police agencies have them at their police department, and they put them on Facebook, and they return the dogs to the owners right from their police agency. So I just want to, they're still available if any police agency wants those. But again, that was before we took over the dog warden division. Those were made available to the police agencies.
Okay. Well, and Chief Moser, I will ask you as well, whether we move forward with anything more defined and elaborate, is that something that your department would be interested in obtaining?
Yeah, I would probably have to make sure we have a good place for it. I mean, the Sallyport comes to mind, but we have a lot of other stuff out there right now. We'd have to make some room for it, but I'm sure we could find some place for one of those.
Okay. Well, my hope now is to maybe turn this over a bit to Chief Moser. And if you would be kind enough to share with us how the police department is currently handling dog calls or canine calls, but also I'll say calls in general regarding dogs, cats, and nuisance animals.
Well, basically, we can combine them all into one. Anytime Red Center gets a call of an animal problem, they are supposed to dispatch our officers. Our officers respond, and depending on the circumstances, what is there, they try to do as much as they can with what they have. You know, sometimes that may be actually taking a dog into custody. Sometimes it may be making a phone call to the dog warden if we can't get the dog. It may be talking to the owners of the dog, trying to solve the problem. You know, they also have the option of, you know, citations if it's warranted. So yeah, our guys are capable of, I mean, they respond to all calls. What they do there just depends on the circumstance, but they are fully able to respond and do what they can do.
Okay, I will ask another question. Chief, do you feel that your officers are sufficiently trained to handle the majority of the calls that they are receiving? Again, whether it's the canine calls, cat calls, or nuisance animal calls.
Well, there are a lot of different variables in there when we're talking about training. As far as the laws go, yes, they're trained in they know the laws, they know the city ordinances, state ordinance referring to animal offenses. You know, they are not trained on techniques for capturing animals or anything like that. I don't think we want to be putting our officers in a situation like that. But you know, there's just so many different variables you could be talking about. I don't, you know, they are trained for the majority of the calls that they go on and are able to handle them. You know, how they handle it may not be to the complete satisfaction of the caller, because if they can't catch a dog, they can't catch a dog. And I don't care if it's you have animal control or dog warden or what. If the dog isn't going to come around, it's not going to come around. So as far as training, I think for the majority of the calls, yes. But obviously there are going to be some things where no amount of training is going to be sufficient, and then other calls where it requires very specialized training if you're going to be trapping or trying to capture a dog or other animal that doesn't want to be captured.
Can you also provide us with the number of calls that you are currently getting? And then I guess I would ask for the division of how many canine calls are you getting, how many cat-related calls are you getting, and how many nuisance animal calls are you getting?
I don't have a breakdown. The only numbers that I was able to get from the dispatch center was totals for the last 2 years, and I believe you got a copy of that. It has it broken down by month, and they're just titled animal complaints. So for the past 2 years total, we've had just a little over 1,000 animal complaint calls.
And there's no breakdown of what types of calls those were?
No.
Okay, at this time, I'd
Mrs.
like to,
Littman, I have a question.
I'm sorry, who is, can you identify yourself?
Mark Lombardi, Ward 1.
Oh, Mark, I'm sorry. When I'm looking at your picture, you don't move, so I couldn't tell that you were actually speaking. Yes, I'd like to open up questioning from the committee members first, please. So Mark, absolutely, go ahead.
Thank you. The particular complaint that had me bring this forward, originally he was told that we could not do anything to the owner of the animal unless the officers heard the animal barking. I was told by one of the sergeants that if the officer heard the animal barking, even though the people were not home, he could leave a citation. That night, they could not catch the animal barking. This last weekend, however, another officer was called out again, same complaint, same people, same dog. The dog was out alone from about 2 in the afternoon until this was about 9 o'clock at night when the officer came out. The officer caught the animal barking, but he told the complainant that he could not cite the people because they were not home, and there was no way they could cite them if they weren't home. Right now, the way it looks like, the only way we're going to be able to enforce a nuisance law on a dog owner who's being irresponsible to begin with, is that they have to be standing right there while their dog's being a nuisance.
That's incorrect. We do have to serve citations in person. That could be done at a later time.
Mr. Lombardi, did you have anything further
You have to
regarding?
serve it in person. The officer witnessed the dog. Yes. If we have to serve citation in person, why can't the officer return when the people are home? In this case, we just dropped it because the people weren't.
I would have to know more particulars on that. I can't tell you what somebody else was thinking.
Linda?
I'm sorry.
This is Jim Parrott.
Yes, Mr. Therrett, you have a
Um,
question?
Yeah, and it's almost the flip side of the coin of Mark's. The situation that we've had encountered is the dog barks 6 hours at a time sometimes, unstopping, even when the PD is there. But as far as sometimes 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, it's sometimes we call 2 and 3, 4 times. They get called, they come out, but the owner's not home. You know, the dog's only barking because he's cold and wet, usually, and scared, frankly. When he's out in the summertime, or when it's warm out, he just sits there as calm as can be. So, well, this isn't really so much a dog problem, it's a people problem. They're with the abuse. Now, the sheriff said they don't handle abuse calls. Does our police department handle abuse calls, or who do we call?
Well, and the information that we were provided, which encompassed 505.01, which started with harboring certain animals, and it included 505.09, which is barking or howling dogs. But as part of this ordinance or these ordinances, there are also mistreatment of dogs. So I guess I'll answer. I'm looking at it here, but then we'll turn that back over to the chief on how those types of situations, again, are currently being handled.
Linda, this is Sheriff Meyer. If I could just jump in real quick.
Oh, sure, Sheriff. Go ahead.
To give a previous person, I'm sorry, I don't know everybody online, but person Paul, he's exactly right. We do not handle calls inside a municipal corporation. However, we frequently handle abuse and neglect calls within our police jurisdiction as part of our normal sheriff deputy duties. They're not part of the dog warden duties, if you can separate those in your mind for just a moment. So we do handle those types of calls, and we do have some officers that receive training in animal humane issues to be able to handle those calls. So we can handle that. A couple other points while I've got you here. The kennel that's kept at the police department, if there's a way you can do that, that really is beneficial not only to your community, but for the people that lose it. We encounter daily of people that their dog just got loose. They're not harming anybody. They're just running it loose, and they got loose. And we recover those dogs pretty easily. Normally, we open our door and they jump in the car with us, okay? And so we reunite those pets who are licensed properly and some that aren't licensed properly with their owners. By having a kennel, you'll cut down, I know your police agency utilizes their social media quite frequently. You can cut down on, and it's a really good public relations tool to communicate with your constituency and the community on recovering their pet.
Oh, Sheriff, thank
Yes.
you very much. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate your information. I did want to ask Chief Moser, on both of the incidences that were discussed by Mr. Lombardi and Mr. Therrett, do you feel that your officers handled them as they are trained to handle them? And if so, or if not, what could they or should have they done further?
Well, that's not a determination that I can come to just hearing one side of the story. That's something I would have to talk with the officers. There's a lot of discretion involved in police work, and I'm not going to sit here and say they did right or they did wrong or they should have done this when I don't know the full story. I don't know what they observed. I don't know what they heard. I don't know what else was going on in the shift. So, I mean, if you have specific examples, let me know. I can talk with the officers. I can find out, what they knew at the time. I'm not going to sit here and try to be a judge without hearing the full story.
I understand that. What I guess I was looking for is these two incidences are two of many. When the initial discussions began, and I will say back even prior to campaigning for this term, all of us were asked the question about animal control. And I guess I will say from that point to current, it is the most discussed, the most questioned questions that I've received, and I'm not sure if others on my committee have received as many communications. And I'm seeing Jim Theriot's head shaking. Yes. But there appears to be, and I don't have a number for you, but I will say quite a few situations that residents feel that they were not taken care of in a proper fashion. And that's not a judgment. I guess I'm just repeating. I'm the conduit between the phone calls I'm getting and maybe situations that the police have responded to. Mr. Theriot, please go ahead. I see your hand up.
Yeah, Lynn, I didn't want to interrupt, but you're exactly right. And after a while, frustration sets in, and when you see nothing happen, you stop calling. So that's what I've been hearing a lot of too. I call and they don't do anything. I call and they don't do anything. The dog's still barking or still out and running around or whatever. So I guess that lends itself to, and Chief, I'm not pointing the finger at anyone. I know guys get busy, and the dog call is pretty far down the line a lot of times. But what can we do? I mean, sometimes it's the owner. It really is the owner, not the dog.
No, you're right. It is the owner in those situations. But I will say, just for instance, the letter that was sent in recently about a situation on Reservoir Drive. We reviewed that after receiving that letter. We even checked out body camera. We have body camera footage of officers responding, dog's not barking. Okay, it's in the front yard. Our officer goes up, knocks on the door, no answer. Dog still doesn't bark. We have a car go by, hit its air horn. Dog still doesn't bark. I look at that situation and I'm saying our guys did nothing wrong. There was nothing they could do at the time. And, sometimes I think, and I'm not going to say we're perfect, okay? I fully understand that. But there are sometimes that the public doesn't really understand the law and what we need to actually take enforcement action.
Chief, I think you hit the nail on the head right there. We're back to education. We're not only to, here to educate ourselves on how these types of calls are being handled, but I think we do need to go one step further and educate our community on how these calls should be handled. And, as far as the barking dog ordinance, or the nuisance, what else am I looking at here? The nuisance animals, registering, abandoning, I mean, all of these laws that are on the books are certainly something that our community needs to be aware of as well. And I mentioned the barking and howling dog ordinance because it seems to be, what both of these issues are that we're speaking of today, but also the majority of the complaints I will say are those types of noise situations or neglect, as Mr. Theriot was stating. So I guess I'll put the question back to both of the professionals that we have on the line with us, both the sheriff as well as Chief Moser. As we as council members and committee members look at this situation going forward, What recommendations or suggestions would you have for us? I mean, we're hearing the complaining side. You're right. We're not hearing the officer did everything right side at this point. So we need to decide if what we have in place currently is what we should have. Should we just be enforcing the laws that we have on our books regarding to the canines, how we include the sheriff's office, and if we continue to do to work directly with the dog warden division, or if we look at something else. So I guess what I'd like to ask back to the two of you is, where do you see us best satisfying the needs of our community when it comes to animal control? And Sheriff, if you don't mind, I'm going to pose that question to you first.
Sure. Well, when you pose the question the way you pose it, it can be interpreted a couple different ways, because you said animal control. The only thing that I can do to help you is related to the things that we can do by law as a Stark County Dog Board. And we're happy to do that. And I think we already have done that. And even if the police department, I think there's been cases where they've had vicious dogs where we've come in and handled the report, handled the citations. You know, the chief mentioned, and he's correct, it's difficult. You know, their officers have to witness a violation in many cases to issue a citation. And they have to issue the citation to the perpetrator. So it does take a little bit of extra work and some fortitude on the behalf of the officers. And so, you know, that's something that has to be handled internally with some training probably on what the expectations are. You have to set the expectations. So I don't have the numbers in front of me, and I don't think the chief probably has the numbers in front of him. But my question would be, and we can get this answer, how many citations has the police department issued? If there were 1,000 calls over the last 2 years, let's divide that in half. That's roughly 500 calls a year. Of those 500 calls, how many citations were issued? The answer is not issuing citations. That's might be part of the problem, okay? And if there's additional training that needs to be done, additional background that needs to be taken to get the officers into the position where they feel comfortable doing that, because it's not an area where some of them are comfortable, and that's why we hosted the training. But if you issue no citations, no action, nothing changes. And that's the kind of the definition of sanity. If you expect something to change, you got to change something. So if you continue to issue no citations or low-level citations, nothing will change.
Chief Moser, will you please answer that question?
I think overall, the way things have been going works. Again, overall, not in all specific instances. I think we have a good working relationship with the sheriff's office. We have called them on several occasions to come out and assist us. If it is a situation where, and like I said before, our guys aren't perfect, that they may not follow through on some of these calls. If there are calls where the dog is barking excessively and there is no owner there, then yeah, our guys should be going back later and at least confronting the owner, if not issuing a citation. Yeah, it may just be an issue where we need to make sure that is clear, that we are expecting all calls to be followed through and not just the major ones.
So I guess I'll ask that question again. Do you think that what we are doing currently is how we as a city should be addressing and we'll go with the canine calls initially, but going forward?
I would say yes. Can we make it better? Yes, but I think the current structure that we have is sufficient.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Therrett, I saw you had a question.
Yeah, I mean, how many times is there a factor that involved there where you have to do so many times, witness these things so many times before you do a citation? And is it a stacking thing? If you get 6, 7, 8, 9 citations for the same thing, does it escalate? Does it have any teeth? Say?
I'd have to look at the ordinance to see if if it can be enhanced because of prior offenses. To be honest, normally our guys, if they go and there's a barking dog and they can talk with the owner, they will, like I said, they have discretion. They will give a warning, have them take the dog inside. They are aware that it's an ongoing problem and it's been happening over and over again. That changes things significantly. But I will say that our current reporting system, record system, is not real amenable to looking up prior calls and dispositions. Dispatch can do it, but again, that takes more time for the dispatchers. And depending on how busy they are, they might not have the time to be able to do that. But yeah, we try to take all that into consideration when deciding to either give a warning or write a citation.
I did just want to identify 505.09, barking or howling dogs. It does say whoever violates this section is guilty of a minor misdemeanor.
Yeah, right there.
Ms. Littman,
I'm sorry, I don't know who.
Ed
Who's
Lewis,
asking?
if I'm allowed to speak.
Oh,
Ed Lewis.
yes, I just a second, Ed. I wanted to make sure if there were any other questions at the moment from the committee. No, I think Mr. Lombardi has exited the call for some reason.
I think
Mr.
he timed
Lombardi?
out and came back.
So he may be back. Okay, Ed, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'll extend the invitation to the rest of council for any questions or comments you might have.
Just wanted to make sure that we also don't lose focus that while nuisance dogs such as barking and howling is something that we would like to address, for me, when we talk about animal control, dog warden, I'm really focused on the risk factors. We have a gentleman that's come in and spoken on council a couple of times now on the west side where he's had his animals attacked. He's been attacked. We have complaints of strays around bus stops and things of that nature. And that's been going, and really this has been going on for a while because I know a little over 2 years ago, we started to try to address this issue. And it was prior to the sheriff having the dog warden duties. And we were asked if we could just put it on pause for a moment and see what the change would be like. And this is nothing about the sheriff. I'm sure he's doing a wonderful job. But locally, we still continue to have this issue where we have these stray dogs that are posing a threat to other citizens and their pets. And that's really what we need to also address because, you know, people's health and safety compared to barking, which is a nuisance and we don't like it. I really want to make sure we address that health and safety factor as well.
Thank you, Ed. Did Mr. Lombardi join the call again? I can't take a shower. We're hearing a lot of background noise. If you're not speaking, will you please put your phone or your microphone on mute? Are there any other questions or concerns or questions that you'd like to pose to the sheriff and or the police chief at this point.
Linda, can I interrupt one quick second and let you know that Stefan has joined our call some time ago from
Okay.
the Stark Parks.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you, Diane.
Mhm.
Stefan, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I apologize. I didn't want to interrupt.
Oh, that's fine. This is Linda Littman. I'm chairman of the Police and Fire Committee. Could you take a few minutes of our time and just educate us a little bit on what you are currently seeing at the Stark Parks Wildlife Center and where we can use your facility when it comes to either our probably more so nuisance animal calls?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yes, so the Wildlife Conservation Center, as you may know, so we do not deal with any domesticated species because our ultimate goal is to release wildlife back into the wild, which we cannot do with pet species or exotic species. So what we do get a lot of calls with this, and we do try to help people with them as best as we could, or can, I'm sorry. So as far as exotics or pet trade species, we try to offer up some other rescue facilities that are available to help with their issues. A lot of times it's they found a stray, or most likely, no, I'm sorry, I'm babbling. Most of it is them wanting to get rid of an animal that they've had. So we look to find other shelters that can take those kinds of animals. A lot of them are reptiles and amphibians. On the other hand of that is nuisance animals, as far as wildlife goes. So like woodchucks, raccoons, skunks, squirrels in the attic, anything anybody doesn't want in their yard. We don't come out and trap. We offer live trapping rentals. They can come to us and trap the animal themselves. However, they have to decide what to do with that animal because they're not allowed to release it on any park property. And of course, there are other regulations that go along with trapping, depending on the species that you're trapping. So we try to do a lot of education over the phone. I would say for the most part for our facility, education is key. We try to educate the public a lot because once you start to get into trapping, it can get a little difficult and it never really solves the problem because another animal could come back. So we try to figure out what the real issue is. They have a hole in their attic, or they have a hole under their den or shed or whatever it may be. We try to give them those educational tools on what to do to deter the animals from coming back. So that's the key point that we try to push for those kinds of things. And as well as any other nuisance animal, and I said this before, they could trap or, try to get rid of one animal, but there could be another one that could be coming through. So we need to educate the public on how to deal with these instances because they're always going to be living with wildlife. So that's what we push very hardly. We try to push educating the public on what they can do in those instances, but safely. So safe deterrence, non-lethal deterrence for these animals.
So you say that you work with other organizations that more rescue facilities. So let me give you an example. If there are raccoons in my attic and I need to get them out of my attic, are you able to assist in any way, even referring me to someone?
Yes, so we first offer what deterrents there are available so they don't have to pay a trapper to come and do that. So we offer deterrents they can use. If they want to do a trapper, then there is a list of licensed trappers on the Ohio Division's website. So we could either, at the facility, we have a list of licensed trappers that we print off every year from the Division of Wildlife. So we could help them, give them a few numbers that way. But again, we really try to push deterring the animal another route. First of all, it saves them some money, and second of all, they don't have to go and capture the animal or rent a trap themselves. It's very hands off.
So would you say for any resident that may have a nuisance animal situation, their first call is to you?
Yes, it absolutely can be.
And what are your hours and or times of availability?
The facility answers phones from 8:30 to 4, 7 days a week. At the moment, the facility is going to answering machines right now, but we are returning phone calls. That will change, I believe, the 30th. Is that the Thursday, if I'm looking at that right? That
Yes, the
Thursday, we're hoping to open and have people at the actual facility starting on the 30th.
Mr. Lombardi and Mr. Therrett, do you have any questions of Stefan?
Maybe just a phone number for now.
Sure,
Would
absolutely.
you provide that?
Yes, the Wildlife Center's direct phone number is 330-477-0448.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I do thank you, Stefan, for that information. But I do think that letting the public know, letting our city residents know just what you stated, that you are their first phone call, not the police department, not the mayor's office, but educating the public that you are the first call. And then if you need to include any other organization or refer them to someone else for remediation, that they can get that information from you. So I think that's part of our overall animal control issue that we need to think about when deciding as a committee and then certainly as a council as to how we'd like to proceed with this. Any other questions for Stefan from the remaining council members that are on the call? Okay, I don't see any. Mayor, are you on the phone call this evening?
Yes, I am.
Would you like to make any comments at this time?
I will say that I'm sorry that the Humane Society couldn't be on the call. Jackie is a wealth of knowledge as well. And they do take abandoned puppies and kittens. And they also take owner surrenders, such as cats or dogs. So she is a wealth of knowledge. So maybe there's another opportunity that we can get her on the line.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm sure that there will be a few more committee meetings and certainly an opportunity for her to come and speak directly to the full council as well. Does anyone
And there's also
else
another, Linda, may I add, let me find it here. There's also another company called One of a Kind, and they will help with feral cats. And what they typically do is they capture them, they neuter them, and then they re-release them. One of the things that we learned when we met with the sheriff, and Sheriff, thank you, and Stark Park for being on the line tonight, and Stefan from Stark Park. But one of the things that we learned was feral cats, if you get rid of all the feral cats that we have in our community, guess what you get? Then the rodents come. And so the feral cats is kind of like part of nature, is that the feral cats take care of the rodents that we have in our community. So we can utilize a company and get rid of the feral cats, but then you're going to have all the cat lovers, and that's part of the Division of Wildlife. And Stefan can probably speak to that, but they can get rid of them, but they kill them. And so I don't think that that's a step that we want to take with that as well. So we have educated ourselves, and I know I want to speak to the call on Reservoir Drive. You know, that was the call that came up about a month ago. And I had the chief research that, and like he spoke, Lieutenant Meyer was the officer in charge, and he supported everything that our officers did. And they reviewed body cams, and they did an outstanding job because, again, you have to have the dog barking. And it showed that with what our officers did, the dog was not barking. One of the things that I would like to encourage is just our residents talking to one another. You know, when there's a problem that, you know, they have between themselves, sometimes, many times it can be worked out if we just have that conversation to say, you know, this is really bothersome, you know, for our family. And so I'd like to encourage that as well. Not everything has to be a police call. We can have those and at times hard conversations. And then if they can't be resolved there, I think the chief and the sheriff would agree with me. That's when the police can be called, when it can't be resolved and it really is, you know, a nuisance to the neighbor.
Very much for that information. I will agree. I'll also add that many times what I see happening is the banter starts on social media. Rather than walking across the street and having that conversation, they start with social media, and that gets, you know, whether it's a you know, right situation or a wrong situation, it just gets to be escalated into, you know, more of a he said, she said type thing until we've gotten half the community involved on a call or a situation that no one really even knows what the issues were. So I do appreciate that and do wish that there'd be, you know, some conversation between residents if it can be resolved without a police officer involved. That would certainly be beneficial. I guess I'll ask, we only have a few more minutes left. Do we have any other questions or comments to be made? We do have the sheriff and the police chief still on the line with us. Seeing none, I'd like to call another committee meeting, not for next week, which is our actual council meeting, but the following Monday, because I don't think this is something that we need to let go. We need to thoroughly analyze what's currently being done, and if we feel it's sufficient, do we need to tweak it in any way? And a piece of what I think we as council members are responsible for is also assisting with the education. When we get the call, whether it's the call that says, I think we need an animal control officer, or the call that says, you know, I don't think our police department's handling the calls correctly, that we have a unified response saying, well, if this is what the situation is, this is what we do next. Because this isn't, you know, 6th Ward situation. It's not the 1st Ward situation. It's a citywide situation. So if we have a uniform response to the residents, not only from an education piece, but also a response piece, I think that would be very beneficial for the city. So at this point, Mr. Barrett and Mr. Lombardi, would you be available for, and let me get that actual date for you. That date would be
May 11th?
Yes, May 11th. And that would be again at 5:30.
Yes.
Mr. Lombardi, would that work for you as well? I don't know that he got back on, but I will check with him to make sure that that would work for him. Of course, all council is welcome. Justin, I would like to have one question answered. Justin Richard, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I would like to work on putting a suggestion together that I would like to share with my committee members. Can I communicate with them one at a time to talk about how we can bring back some maybe ideas in more of a consolidated format? I want to make sure we're not stepping on the Open Meeting Act or the Sunshine Laws in any way by just having that overview of what we've talked about today with my committee member, one at a time.
Councilwoman Littman, unfortunately, because our committees are only 3 people, it's my understanding that a quorum exists when you have 2. So we would, in fact, if you were communicating committee business to an individual in your committee, it would, in fact, constitute a public meeting that would have to be recorded, and minutes would be taken, and it would have to be provided to the public.
Okay, so what I will do then is I myself will put something together as a starting point. Just looking at, what we've discussed in our committee meeting today, and where we might want to begin our discussions on May 11th. Would that be satisfactory?
Absolutely, and I
Sure.
also, to a point, I didn't want to interrupt earlier, but the fine for a minor misdemeanor, which all minor misdemeanors, I think everybody kind of got it, but they have to be witnessed by law enforcement personnel. That is the only standard of proof, is the actual officer testifying to witnessing the minor misdemeanor. So that's why, even though it was frustrating, a sworn law enforcement officer has to actually witness a minor misdemeanor being taken place. The fine for that, there is no jail time. It's up to $150, and that specific minor misdemeanor does not increase with the number that you can have 10 of them. It's not enhanceable.
Okay. Thank you for that information.
Yes.
Okay, does anyone have anything further that they'd like to discuss this evening?
Well, it is 6:31, so we have to start our next meeting.
Okay, well, then I will call our
Sure.
committee meeting to an end.
Is this open? Sorry, I just have to, real quick, Diane, do you need a roll call for the 6:30 meeting?
You guys know in this regard, juveniles with their sister.
Diane? I still see you muted if you're trying to say anything to me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm going to disconnect myself from the call and come back in so I can distinguish the police and fire committee from the regular committee meeting.
We're waiting.
Is this open to the public that a resident can ask a question?
At the end of this session, we will open it up to the public.
Thank you.
Call recording and transcription are turned off. This call is being recorded.
Okay, Ed.
All right, did you need a roll call?
Yes. Creamer,
Present.
Greg,
Here.
Halter,
Here.
Hernkane, Kane,
Here.
Lewis,
Present.
Littman,
Here.
Lombardi, Lombardi. I see he's here.
He is. He's just having technical difficulty.
Starrett and Barrett.
I'm here.
9 present.
Eisnick, here.
Eisnick,
Here.
thank you.
All right, thank you. Hey, I'm just going to go a little bit off book and say, Linda, I know you have a couple more things you might want to just say and call the meeting and everything. So go ahead and finish your meeting.
Well, thank you. I just wanted to make sure that we had next discussions or next steps. And that would be on May 11th at 5:30. Mr. Lombardi, I'm hoping that that will work for you as well. In the meantime, I'd like to put a summary together of what we've discussed currently, as well as just a beginning point or starting point for our May 11th meeting. So our discussion on currently how animal control is being taken care of in our city is known not only by the committee members, the council members, but also by our community. And then also try to look at the edge piece of what we need to make sure that our community knows. So that's all I needed to include.
Hey, Linda, I was just thinking during all that, and maybe it's something we can all think about, like you already hinted to, and then at the next one talk about. One of the first steps probably is that education piece, just whether it be social media, newspaper with a small budget, these are the numbers you call in these situations, things like that, and help that education.
Yeah.
That's probably going to be a good first step. So.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right, so we don't have any new legislation tonight. So for the sake of that, I guess this part might be easy. Community development. Do we have anything that you want to discuss?
I cannot hear Megan at all. I see your mouth
Sarah, we
moving, but I
cannot
can't.
hear you. You're not muted.
Nope, can't hear.
Nothing.
That
All
she
right,
has
we're gonna
nothing.
go down the list, and you can go ahead and work on that. Environmental. Do you have anything you wanted to discuss tonight?
Nothing.
Health, welfare,
Nothing.
Parks, Rec.
Nothing.
I'm assuming police and fire is covered.
Wait, I've got one more thing.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I want to put one more discussion out there under police and fire. And that would be, hold on just a second. I wanted to bring up the notes here. Speed control in our community. I'm getting a lot of calls and a lot of concerns from residents in our, and I'll say our neighborhoods, but certainly on Main and on the west side here as well, Main and Tremont, where that intersection is. But the kids being out of school, most of the days, if we've got a nice day out, there's a lot of activity on our streets, and there's been some significant concern about the speed in our neighborhoods. Now, I have asked in the past, and this is kind of a continuation of the discussions that we've had on speed issues in the neighborhoods, where we have had our radar strip being put down in certain neighborhoods. We had Lanedale, we had Wood Forest, and then we also had down by Mayflower Shopping Center. I know more recently, Ted had asked one to be done on Bird. So I think we're collecting a lot of, and I'll say, evidence of the speeds that are occurring in the neighborhoods. And I guess I'll address the concern I have too. In the reports that we've been given, it doesn't show that there is a need for intervention, but it's also looking at between a 10-mile-per-hour variance and a 15-mile-per-hour variance. Well, when you've got 25 miles per hour as your speed limit, you know, plus 15, even plus 10 is way too much for that residential area. And, you know, I guess I'm not as concerned. You know, I've had issues here on Lincoln Way on the west side also where I've gotten phone calls. I'm concerned about that, but I guess I'm even more concerned about the condensed residential areas. I'll say, you know, out in our off 93, Mayflower, those kind of things, where those sort of areas where there's a lot of concentrated kids that are out in the streets and riding bikes and so forth. So again, I think it's an issue where if we're writing citations or if we're watching and we see that there's, you know, whether it be through our police department or an officer. I know I had a conversation with an officer recently, and he said that sitting on Main, he allows a 15-mile-per-hour variance before addressing a speeder. You know, I don't know if that's protocol. I don't know if that's just what the officer, you know, again, is discretionary there, if there was an issue. But there are residents that are around those situations that are viewing them. And although they do not know exactly how fast they're going, they know that they're going faster than 25 miles per hour. So I know that our animal control issue is first and foremost, but I do want to make sure that we continue opening up the discussion on the speed controls for our city and specifically our neighborhoods, looking at, do we need additional signage? Do we need additional enforcement? And also we had talked about the purchase of a radar sign at one point in time to use as a deterrent. I know when I come onto a situation that says exactly what my mile per hour is, how fast I'm going, I tend to slow down. So those are just a few things that I'd like to continue discussion on through the Police and Fire Committee.
Well, it's funny that you bring that up. I was actually going to say something and tonight during streets, because it can go in either one. Ted Hernking can probably weigh in on this as well. Him and I have both been researching some options. I know he was looking at the radar signs and I was looking at some speed bump options as passive. So I guess it doesn't really matter where it lands, but I was going to ask Ted if he'd be prepared to share what he has found at the next work session.
Yes, I can do that.
So, and then I can share what I have found by then as well, and get that conversation going.
Okay. What we'd also, whomever's going to begin spearheading this, like I said, I've had these reports run, the police chief has, for Lanedale, Westbrook, and Mayflower. And at Ted, I'm not sure if Bird was yours, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes.
And I've had numerous calls on Main and Lincoln Way. So yes, I think that's definitely something we don't want to let go too long either. So
absolutely. Anything else, please, Fire?
Oh, I'm sorry. No.
All right. Public utilities. Okay. Rules and courts.
I have nothing.
Streets.
Nothing.
I have nothing new, but a question. Are we still proceeding or doing any work with filling potholes during this interim? anybody, Tracy's still available.
Who are you directing that question to, Mr. Thayer?
Probably the Safety Service Director, Barb, if she's still on. Her mic's mute.
Dangerous situation to our community.
There you
Those
go.
are being addressed. But as the mayor had stated, we are in the preparations for the street department to be back in operations after the governor's release, which would be May the 4th, actually, that he spoke of today.
Super.
Mr. Thayer, I did want to remind you as well as others that I had a situation that had quite a few potholes, and I made the call to Lee McBride, asked him to come out and assess the situation. Even in the emergency situation, he came out and took a look, and they've been filled. So he said, you know, certainly when there are emergency issues where it was a safety concern, they were able to accommodate that. And I don't know, you know, what situations they would or would not do, but in that particular situation, they did.
Thank you. I'll keep that in mind.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, I don't have any.
Ed?
Oh, hello, Mr. Lewis, I don't think I can't see you any longer. Hey, Diane.
Yes.
This is Linda Littman. I'm not sure what happened to Ed, but he's frozen on my screen. But
Yeah.
I wanted you to, if you had
Yeah.
a second to discuss.
Hey, Linda, may I interrupt for a minute?
Oh, sure.
Ed got dropped from call somehow, but I have him on speakerphone, if that's sufficient.
That would need Justin's call.
The idea will just be temporary unless y'all want to wait until I get back on.
Now, I believe we are substantially complying, at least with our best efforts. Obviously, if technology does not cooperate, we can only do our best efforts. So I believe we can continue.
Speaking of technology, do you think perhaps I could ask Diane if she's been able to talk to any other municipality or Canton council in particular to determine what types of technology might be appropriate or better than what we're currently using through Uber Conference going forward?
I do have that information, Linda, but I think we should let Ed continue going down the roster. We did not mention finance, and if he had anything for finance.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
That's
I looked
okay.
at
We lost him.
Sorry
We
about
lost
that.
him. Ed?
Yes, I have nothing new for finance. I did want to give an opportunity for Mr. Thayer and Mr. Hernking to speak to their concerns or their ideas that were mentioned this week. However, why don't we go ahead and Linda, why don't you start that conversation regarding technology while I try to load back up?
Okay. Okay. And actually, I had just asked Diane to make a couple of phone calls. So, Diane, if you could share that with us, that would be appreciated.
Yes, I called today to Canton Council, and I spoke with a young lady named Beth. And Canton is trying tonight, for the first time, their live stream. Their chambers is still open to the public. If someone does not have access to a computer or would like to come in and discuss something or talk to council about something, there is still council chambers open for public speaking. However, they are practicing the social distancing, which is 6 feet apart, sanitizing, and their service is going through YouTube.
Did they indicate that YouTube had any charge or cost or restrictions?
The lady that I spoke with did not have any knowledge of that. She transferred me to a young man named David, and he did not have any knowledge of that either. So I probably would have to research that myself.
Diane,
Yes, sir.
did you happen to talk to the cable company by any chance?
No, I did not.
See if they would, I would think that they would have some capabilities that we may be able to work with.
Well, as I stated before,
Mhm.
I don't see why we should incur any more costs than what we already have. We have over a $10,000 system in here. And if we're going to utilize that to the best of our ability, and it's not even 5 years old yet because I've been here 5 years, we can practice social distancing. We don't have to open it to the public. That's council's choice. But it has been very difficult for me to actually do my job efficiently with the teleconferencing. I understand, I respect our governor, I respect our mayor, but I think we should find some kind of way to utilize what we already have instead of incurring another additional cost. I'm just your counsel, but that's my personal opinion.
I think to that point, my one hesitation of going too far down the rabbit hole of technologies, we're looking at what, maybe 2 to 4 weeks. In 2 weeks' time, we're going to have most businesses back open. So I would hate for us to expend a great amount of time and energy and money on something that in 4 weeks or so we wouldn't be utilizing because we'd be back into the chambers. Maybe some efforts would be best served in maybe some temporary plexiglass that would go between each one of the council members, since we would not be able to be 6 feet apart, and just incur a little bit of cost there to have that done. And then we can come back to chambers. That's just a thought I'm having. Because to be honest with you, we're going to eventually come back to chambers, but COVID-19 is not going anywhere. So that plexiglass may end up being in place for 6 months or longer just for safety purposes. So it may have more long-term value for the amount of time and energy expended into it than a teleconferencing option. Just my thoughts. I don't know.
I'm in agreement with you, Ed.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Eisnick. So, I mean, I think that's something. Do you think, Ms. Eisnick, is that something that you would maybe be able to, I don't know, make some calls about, or would you want one of us to do that?
Calls about to what, if we can have them at council chambers?
The plexiglass. I'm just wondering, like maybe someone like Stark Glass might know whether or not that is something that they would be able to outfit us with.
Hey, Ed,
Okay.
Yes.
I've had a conversation with Mr. Pedro this week because I've received several phone calls from golf leagues about the golf course. And the reason I'm bringing this up now is because they are, and he relayed to me that they are looking at putting plexiglass between the golfers in a cart. So I guess I would say if Claudette is going to be looking at, pricing or companies that might be able to do that, Steve Pedro has an individual and a company that is looking at doing that for us. And I'll just say on a very, very inexpensive basis. So if maybe that individual could help us in council chambers, if he's already doing it for the golf course.
Thanks, Linda. I'll give Steve a call tomorrow.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Isnick.
With council if I do that? And if we can have it done reasonably, shall I set it up or you want to talk about it on Monday?
I would assume that if it's in the budget, does anybody have a disapproval of Claudette just moving forward with it?
No.
No, I think that would just
set it up.
I'll see what I can do.
This is Law Director Justin Richard. May I speak to that?
Yes.
Mr. Pedro had me overlook possible negotiations. The company is named Weston, Westin and Associates. I'm looking at my email right now to see if I can find the agreement that I sent. The approximate cost of each cart was $140. So if you imagine, yeah.
That seems fairly reasonable. Would everybody else agree? I mean, you think about it, we'd multiply that by 10.
Is that something that you're thinking about being permanent in council chambers?
Are you asking me, Jim? Because I know it's going to be there for a while.
I would assume it would be there at least 6 months.
Just as long as it has to be then? Is that what you're saying?
As far as I'm concerned.
Same here.
Safe is safer.
I guess I would also ask Mayor Kathy.
I'm here.
I want to tap into a little bit of your medical experience. Do you think that would be a sufficient safeguard?
If you're not 6 feet apart, Barb and I have been working with each department directly because each department is different. And so if anyone is not 6 feet apart, we are going to require them to wear a mask while they're working. So I would say that because you're not 6 feet apart, you would still have to wear a mask. And we can run that by Terry Argent, our health commissioner. Barb, do you agree with my thought?
I do, and again, we've done extensive work on this with our local health department as well as with the CDC guidelines. And I can tell you that you can also get a quote from Start Glass. We have put a plexiglass, full glass across our engineering counter, so that if and when we have the public come back in, when they absolutely need to come back in, we feel a lot of the work's going to be able to be done over the phone and by email. But if we do have to come back in, Start Glass has already installed that. We've already done one in engineering. We've also done one in our building department for when the public needs to come in there as well. We also did the same thing down in wastewater, a complete counter down there, again, to separate for an additional protection. Some of those areas, our employees can be 6 feet away, but we still felt that it was just an extra layer of protection for them. So Start Glass has been doing that for us. And again, their prices have been very reasonable, and they're a local company here, as well as even in the mayor and I's building, they installed for us a mail slot. So mail persons don't even have to come in. Departments, employees can drop mail into a slot for us as well. So Start Glass was able to install that in our side glass panel of our employee entrance door as well. So, and the only other thing that you might want to keep in mind and monitor today, the governor did say that no greater than 10 people gatherings is still going to be in place. So I don't know for how long that's going to be in place, but he did say that today in his address.
Which means we can't do it?
No, I think you can meet, but you can't have an audience then. So you'd have to figure out a way to stream it somehow.
Well, this is Jim Third. So even with masks and enough technology to stream it to public, that's a more amicable place to have this than council chambers than the way we're doing this now. It's so clumsy.
First last name in reference to that last call.
I think we continue.
I guess I would, this is Linda Littman. I would just ask that if Claudette is getting quotes, that she get it from more than one company.
Yeah,
I will.
absolutely.
I will.
Thank you.
And I think we just kind of, again, the justification still exists that, you know, both Ms. Eisnick and I have stated that, you know, this is going to be with us for a while, even if a month from now or later, when they lift the 10 or whatever, we're still going to be dealing with this. So it's probably just a good safety measure to have regardless.
I think we're pretty certain we're not going to meet there next Monday. Would you say that's a true statement?
I would think we're probably best assuming that we're going to at least, at the very minimum, be meeting virtually for the next 2 to 3 meetings.
Still doing this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would assume.
All right, I will give you an update on Monday unless I have something set in stone. I can't email you all, but, well, I guess I could if I emailed it to the press too. Right, Justin?
Madam President, one email certainly does not, one unsolicited email giving information does not constitute a meeting. Like I had said last week, the only problem comes because it's an invitation for others to then reply. And then when you have a serial or chain email, that's when you could constitute others deliberating and discussing business. But just one email that's an information giving email and you include everyone, and it wouldn't hurt to include the press as well.
Okay.
It doesn't hurt. I don't know that it's required, but it certainly doesn't hurt.
All right, thank you.
All right, is there anything else? I do open it up if there is anyone else that wants to discuss any other potential business to the city this evening.
Mr. Lewis,
Yes.
this is Mr. Hernkane, Councilman Theoret, and I would like to take a couple minutes of your time in the group, if that's all right.
Go ahead, you have the floor.
Diane, we'll basically just read our comments because I know you wanted something in a document that we could email to you for the record, okay?
Okay.
Councilman Theoret and I intend to submit to council a non-committee sponsored ordinance pursuant to the rules of council, establishing and funding a business support program for Massillon businesses during this time of uncertainty. We believe this proposal will be beneficial to our local business community, our residents, and ultimately the city government's future financial outlook. We are going to ask City Council to consider an appropriation of $500,000 from the general fund carryover to the Economic Development Fund in order to provide grants to eligible businesses. Our other communities have taken this approach to assist local businesses in addition to assistance available through the SBA. Massillon has a strong business community, and we believe these funds can aid in their recovery, especially our small businesses. I know many of you think this is a large sum of money for the city to spend at this time. Jim and I are just as concerned about the city's finances as you are. But we believe this is necessary because if we don't do something to provide local support to our local businesses, a lot of them may not bounce back. This should be considered a one-time investment in an effort to sustain current and future tax revenue. Councilman Theoret and I may be the ones submitting this request, but we consider it a group effort. We welcome your input and hope that we can all work together to provide this necessary relief to our businesses so Massillon can remain an economic leader in our region. Councilman Theoret can give some specifics on this program.
Mr.
Mr.
Sarrett, you're
Barrett,
muted.
you're muted.
There you go. Thank you. As Ted mentioned, we're asking council to appropriate $500,000 to the Economic Development Fund to be distributed in the form of grants upon application and city council approval. We're looking at about $10,000 for a business or nonprofit entity located in Massillon, and $15,000 for a business or nonprofit located in our downtown business district. There will be criteria like number of employees, and we think special consideration should be given to those businesses that applied for and didn't receive any federal assistance or weren't even able to apply in general. At this stage, we don't think that being awarded an SBA grant or loan is a prohibiting factor, but we will model this after the SBA's payroll protection program, and that funds can be used for payroll and related expenses, rent, utility payments, and costs associated with creating a safe work environment. The application that the city uses for economic development grants is brief, and we intend this one to be as well. In addition to basic business information, we'll ask how their business has been negatively affected in recent months. Obviously, a lot of businesses have been ordered to shut down and shut their doors altogether. We think the process can be very similar to how the city currently administers the economic development grant funds programs. This program allows for additional assistance for a couple of reasons. One, our downtown businesses went through a great deal of inconvenience during the streetscape project, and they should be granted a little extra assistance because of that. And two, it is prudent of us as city officials to protect our investment in the streetscape. It'd be strange to have a nice new downtown infrastructure and no business because they didn't come back once the governor reopens the economy. Well, in terms of timing, it's likely that the governor will reopen the economy in phases just like it closed. These funds can help a business reopen quicker if they were forced to close, or help a business get back full capacity quicker if they remained open but have experienced a noticeable decline in their business. We appreciate the opportunity to provide an overview of this program tonight. Our goal is to have the necessary legislation to City Council, hopefully by the second or third week of May. We welcome input, as Ted said, through this process, and we hope that all council will see the merit of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I say something? This is
Yes,
Linda
Ms.
Littman. I just wanted to, you had said you were including nonprofits. And I am the vice chair of the Health Foundation for Greater Massillon, and which we are now funneled through the Stark Community Foundation. And we have met for the last 6 Wednesdays with a group of foundations that fall under the Stark Community Foundation. And there have been an opportunity for all nonprofits, those of Massillon as well. And believe me, they have. There are several nonprofits in Massillon that have requested emergency funds for those companies that were significantly impacted by the COVID-19. So there's another means of additional funding for nonprofits through, and Gessner Foundation was on there as well, Massillon Rotary Foundation, Health Foundation, as well as many other much larger foundations that are helping nonprofits with this exact issue across the county. But of course, you know, like the Health Foundation, Rotary Foundation, Gessner Foundation, they have an earmark for those nonprofits in Massillon. So I guess before we would include nonprofits in that, you know, those city funds that you're looking at, we might look at what other funding that they're asking for from other foundations and those that they're receiving. I mean, we're giving out anywhere from, I mean, one of ours was 2,500 up to 15,000.
Great. Well, that's great to hear. We included the
Yeah, I appreciate it.
nonprofits in there just because it was, I didn't, that knowledge wasn't there for us at that moment. That's great.
So, Mrs. Lippman, what I hear you to say is that opportunity could sufficiently address the needs of our nonprofit entities in that, correct?
Well, they have that avenue to request funds. And that's where, I guess I would have a concern also with city money that we're giving out to businesses that may or may not have taken advantage of other revenue sources, other the SBA or other programs that have been put into place, whether it be through state or through the federal government. I guess it means something to me if that business is willing to do whatever is possible, looking at every opportunity to get funds in versus ones that sit on the sideline and say, okay, now city, you need to bail me out. So I guess I'd like a little bit of involvement with, looking at other options before we turn to city money for our businesses, because I think there are other avenues out there. If they've pursued them and have come back with nothing, I wasn't eligible for anything, and now I'm asking the city for money. Then I can think about that a little differently.
Can I interrupt here for a moment, please? This is Diane.
Yes, ma'am.
I received a email and I forwarded it to you all about 4:54 this evening. And it's an organization called Local Gov. And they are holding a webinar scheduled for Thursday, April 30th at 11 a.m. And what you can expect during this webinar is federal disaster relief resource updates, such as the CARES Act, Payroll Check Protection Program, Coronavirus Relief Fund for local governments, FEMA Public Assistance Program, FEMA Public Assistance and other funding tools. You'll learn to understand the shared difficulties of local governments are facing and how they are managing them. Learn about the reimbursable grant writing service that can help secure the disaster funds your community deserves. And there is a link in this email where you can reserve your seat. I will be attending.
Thank you, Ms. Rowland. May I just say, we can talk about as much as we want tonight, but you guys said you're going to be submitting a proposal here in a couple of weeks.
Yes, all we wanted to do. Go ahead.
Yeah, I myself appreciate this effort from you guys and would like to see the proposal before I start discussing too much, because I'm sure that'll give us that foundational place to start from. Is that the idea?
That's understandable. Really, all we wanted to do was just kind of throw it out there that this is something that we intend to pursue. And I'm just like Linda made some comments that we will certainly take into consideration if there's other opportunities available. We think maybe by the middle of May, we could have something committed, submitted, and any input prior to that point, we would love to discuss.
All right. Is everybody okay with that? I mean, I'll be looking forward to seeing that proposal once it comes through. Anybody have any specific comments they want to make tonight regarding it?
This is Mike Gregg. I just like to say I'm in full support of any effort we can provide as a council to help out the businesses in Massillon. I think that's certainly a primary function that we should be looking at doing, but definitely this is going to need some discussion. A lot of points to hammer out, and just curious, and this is something we can talk about later too, but just curious how you came up with the $500,000 number. Was that just is that based upon any type of data that you have that we have of businesses that are needing funds, or is that just a number we thought might work?
It's a number that we thought was a good starting place. we kind of thought that the 10 to 15, up to the 10 to $15,000 range, 10,000 for a business in Massillon, up to 15 for a business in the downtown business district. It just kind of seemed to be the number that we got to once you add maybe 20 or 25 of each of those type of things together. It seemed like we were getting there. If there would be, I mean, if that would be the amount that would be appropriated and not spent, we could return it to the general fund. If it's, you know.
All right, makes sense. Thank you.
Ted and Jim, this is Linda Littman. I'm sorry, I timed out a few times and had to jump back on the call, so I apologize if I'm repeating anything. But my concern is I believe that you're looking at using these funds from carryover dollars. Is that correct?
That would be the starting place unless there's other suggestions.
Well, I guess I'm concerned about looking at what kind of balance we have in the carry forward, and knowing that our future, as far as revenue source and revenue flow, additional expenditures that we are needing through the end of the year based on, you know, our emergency situation, our COVID-19 effects on our businesses, our revenue certainly has to be affected. I would first want to look at either from Lori Boron or our auditors department and getting estimates on what kind of impact, even if it is based on their education, their information that they have, how our revenue may be affected. Because I guess I can foresee our carryover, or much of our carryover that is left, because we've expended a lot of it already, for our streets, our architect, our hospital twice. We still have additional hospital expenses. And I'm certainly not going, you know, either way. I'm just looking at, you know, city revenue going forward through the end of the year before I look at allocating $500,000 outside of what we might need.
Ms. Littman, I can answer some of that and unpack some of that. The first thing I want to point out, though, before people jump on it, the hospital has paid for itself. Every expense that we have put towards that hospital is from revenue that was generated by the hospital itself. So it does not impact our ability or inability for this program or any other program in the city at this time. So I just want to make that very clear. Secondly, we currently have $2.9 million, I believe, in unencumbered general fund dollars. Current projections, I was speaking to the auditor twice last week and once this morning. Current projections are that many municipalities are anticipating a 10 to 15% fall off in revenue collections over the course of the next year due to the COVID-19 slowdown. For the city of Massillon, that equals about a $2 to $3 million drop off. So we are anticipating a drop off in revenue equal to that of our current carryover balance. Potentially. So that is something to keep in mind. There is the potential that we could see carryover come down to near zero just based off of that. But those are all very early projections. We do not have any numbers yet. There's no way to know for sure. I'm not trying to use this as a as anything other than just what some early projections and numbers are for us. And I'm basing that off of $22 million a year revenue. 10% of that's 2.2 million, up to 15%. You know, you're going to get about $2 to $3 million drop off. But like I said, those are just early projections.
I did speak with the auditor this morning as well, just trying to get a feel for where we are currently on our unencumbered carryover as well. But it does concern me what our the decrease in our revenue expenses, as well as our revenue that's being generated, but also the expenses that we're going to incur based on, changes we have to make. And we were just looking at even just making, the handful of changes that we need to make for council, let alone what, the list of things that Barb had gone through as well. I don't even know what those costs were, but it seemed like a pretty extensive list to just get, the first step of COVID ID affected departments back running. I guess I just have some concerns, that's all.
This is Jill. Can I
Yes,
just
Ms.
make a comment
Sure.
also?
Yes.
I agree with both Linda and you, Ed. It's a great idea, but we have a lot of unknowns right now regarding moving forward with this. Regarding, the income tax being generated by our residents, things are going to be coming back slowly. Some people may not even go back. So it's a great idea. I think we need to have multiple discussions, but I think we need to take it very slow because there's so many unknowns. So that's just my thoughts.
This is
Mr.
the
Lewis,
mayor, if I may
Mark
speak for a
Lombardi.
minute.
Mayor, just one moment. Lombardi, go ahead.
Thank you. I agree with you and Mrs. Creamer and Mrs. Littman. I think we really need to tread carefully here. We have done a very good job in the city to protect that carryover and to make sure that it's being expended wisely. And I do believe that we need to tread lightly and make sure that we do protect those funds, because we really do not know what's going to happen down the road here after we get out of the quarantine and everything else. That's all I have to say.
Madam Mayor, you were trying to make a comment?
Yes, thank you, members of council, President Eisnick. I just wanted to, it's a wonderful gesture, goodwill gesture, but I just want to caution you because, they're talking about it's going to take us 2 to 4 years to move ourselves out of this crisis. And so we may need those reserves just to fund our police and fire and our own employees. And so I just want to caution you as you move forward as to your next steps. There is a second wave of SBA funding that is out there right now that we should be encouraging our businesses to go after. The first set of funding, as you all know, expired because people utilized it. Some people utilized it that shouldn't have utilized it and they had to return it. But right now is the time to be applying for those dollars. And that would be really important for our small businesses, medium-sized businesses to reach out to get those funds.
Now, I
Thank
guess
you.
I'd like to make one more comment if I could. This is Linda Littman. Maybe just as an idea would be if we had a person, a department within the city that would help these small businesses take advantage of all of the other federal and or state opportunities that are out there. Sometimes it's just the not knowing, or the they didn't know to go there, they didn't know how to do it, they needed some assistance. They're certainly experts in their own businesses and in their own companies, but they may not be experts in finance and to know how to or where to go to begin this loan process. So maybe somewhere in the city
We have that.
could. Okay, where should they call if there's a small business or a business in town that needs to have some type of assistance, Mayor? Where would they call within the city?
That
for
would
assistance?
be our Chamber of Commerce, Linda, and as well as Stark Development Foundation. They also have been promoting that via their Facebook for businesses. And then businesses should be in tune to what the governor is saying and what the president is saying. It should be knowledge, easily accessed knowledge today about how to access those dollars. I know many businesses have accessed that and have already received their funding.
So if there was a business that needed assistance, we should direct them to the chamber at this point.
The Chamber and the Stark Development Foundation, and I know David is available as well to assist any business with that.
Okay, well, and Ted and Jim, maybe, before our next discussion, we could get a list of those potential companies in town that may need to partake in this type of an assistance, and see if they have applied for other types of assistance, and if they are aware of what all is available to them.
And we also have all that information on our website as well.
All right. Well, again, thank you, Mr. Hernkane and Mr. Therrett. I'm happy we had some conversation, but again, we probably need to get this into a actual request into committee so that we can have more official dialogue about it. Also will allow the press an ample opportunity to review the proposal so that the community will have time to also weigh in on it. So I'll be looking forward to that. I'm sure everybody else on council will as well. Thank you guys again for introducing.
Mr. Lewis, may I make one final comment?
Sure.
Our goal is not to expend all of the city's money. Jim and I are, as I said earlier, very concerned about that as much as all of you are. So our goal is not to deplete the city's funds. What we'd like to do is to try and come up with something that would be available to some Massillon businesses, whether it's obviously 500,000 as a starting place, and if it's not that, then we're reasonable. But I just want everyone to know that our goal is not to spend everything that the city has. Our goal is to maybe take the economic development program that we have on the books, put a little money into it, make it, currently specific to what's going on in our country and our community, and just provide another avenue of support for our local businesses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another suggestion might be backing into that figure by taking applications first and seeing where the need is and how much the need is, and then looking at, can we fund that need? So I guess that's how the nonprofits are doing it. We are allowing our business or our nonprofits to come and giving us their breakdown, giving us the, in fact, I can give you that format as well, as to how they are affected by this COVID virus and how their business has been affected. And then we can look at it, is it a situation available, saying businesses, what do you need and for what purpose, and see if we can help them in some way. So kind of going the opposite direction, instead of the money being there to spend, more of seeing what the need is and deciding if they're appropriate needs.
Thank you. I guess at this time, seeing that we've worked through the all the committees and the businesses for tonight, we will open it up. If there are any public comments, if there is still anyone on the line that would like to make a comment to council, I will say that if you have a specific question, we will help connect you with the person that can answer that tonight. But we do not usually run these as a Q&A. Also, as for the record, please state your name and address so that we can go ahead and record the comment. Is there anyone from the public that would like to speak?
Yes, there is.
This is Blaine Iser. My address is 831 Reservoir Drive, Northeast, and I listened to the Police and Fire Committee meeting, and I'd like to comment on some things pertaining to the dog ordinance. First of all, the mayor suggested that I go and talk to the neighbor directly. Because of the problems that I've had with this woman over the last 14 months, she will not talk to me. She threatens to sue me. She has called the police on me for harassing her. And so I'm now doing what the police have asked me to do, and that is to contact them. And I have been doing this. This is an ongoing problem with this dog. They leave Saturday night, for an example. They left. The dog was out in the backyard from 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It had no food, no water, no shelter. I called, dispatch sent out an officer. He heard the dog barking. He saw the condition the animal was in, and he told me that he cannot issue a citation because they were not home. Well, this dog was not barking until after 11 o'clock that night. My wife has stage 4 terminal cancer, and she needs her rest. And I've explained this to the police. All of you have a copy of the letter I sent out. This is a problem. It's not being resolved. And I'm asking you, as counsel, whomever there can do this for me, please contact the necessary people and get this problem resolved. I agree, it is not the animal's fault, it is the owner's fault. This woman's attitude is, I don't care about anybody else in the world, I'm going to do what I want to do. She's in clear violation of many of the ordinances. This 505.9, she's in clear violation of it. She's not been cited. Will you please do something to take care of this problem? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reiser. I know we had another comment as well tonight.
Yes, this is Tom and Marcia Knopf, 424 3rd Street Northeast. And we've been on the phone since 5:30 listening to you all, and I appreciate your moment here. Last week we had 417 3rd Street. We had a hit and run, shots fired, and a gang of about 15 kids fighting. And this is an ongoing nuisance home. And we have heard no follow-up on anything, and nothing's been in the paper. And I just have a hard time with this continually going on at this house. And I don't understand why the police records don't show. I mean, they should show how many times the officers are over there. And it's been an ongoing problem for us. And yes, we are residents for 40 years in Massillon, and we are the founders of Charm, and we fought and got drug houses done before, and I have no problem helping the police in any way. I'm a prior ex-officer, and I will help and assist, but we need help up here.
Madam Mayor, can he call your office tomorrow to get the additional information he needs?
Yes, he can.
Will that work for you, sir, as a starting point?
Yes, thank you.
We would like
And
to
thank
add
you for
also,
sticking with us for 2 hours.
well, we would also like to add, this is Marcia Knopf. Mr. Therrett has been out. He's been fabulous. We've, let him know what's going on up here, so he is involved, and he does know, and actually came out was here right after we called and let him know about what's going on. We've had a lot of issues in the neighborhood. We've had a lot of things we've cleaned up over the 40 years we've been here. We've never had to live through shots being fired. So this is a real concern for us. And the neighbor's car that was sideswiped, the poor young man had saved up for 18 months and had the car for 5 days. And it was sideswiped, and now he doesn't have the car to go to work. So we just want to see if there's any updates here. No one was arrested. We do know the name of the young man that was involved, and he has been driving by here since then. But unfortunately, by the time that he drives by and someone sees the car that the police were looking for, by the time you call, of course, he's gone. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. And it's quite an unfortunate incident to happen in the city. Are there anyone else on the line for public comment?
Yes, Mr. Lewis, this is James Havistow, 2443 Wittenberg Avenue, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Okay, just a couple real quick items here, if I may. First of all, I was contacted by a resident, and I'm not quite sure why they contact me, but they think I got some kind of pull, and I told them I don't. But over in the Legends, the street condition, especially on Veterans Boulevard, they said they have notified the city, and they are frustrated. I don't know to what level, so I'm not even going to take it from there. But I said I would at least mention it at a council meeting. The streets, she sent me actual pictures and videos. And the streets are bad enough where when a car drives down, not necessarily speeding, but even at 25 miles per hour, is flipping rocks into the front yard. And one of her children was hit by a rock because the curb is caving in, and also excessive concrete. And I believe the city is actually aware of that, at least the street department. So it's an ongoing issue. And now that the kids are home from school, they're riding bikes. They said they can't even ride a bicycle safely at the edge of the street because of the large grooves. And there are pictures and videos to confirm, which I'd be happy to pass on. So I just thought I'd pass that on. They contacted me. They saw me out cutting grass somewhere this week and asked me if I would do that. And I did that as a courtesy for another citizen. The other thing too is I know we were talking about, I was listening to Ted and Jim Therrett, and I really commend them because our city has to begin to go above and beyond when it comes to attracting business. And everything we do, it's not just a black and white when we say, oh, we've got to watch our budget. I agree 100% because as I've stated for a long time, the city is not as strong financially as we like to think it is at times. And that's not criticism of anyone. We just have to face reality. When it comes to these grants they're talking about for business, the idea is excellent. However, may I suggest as a citizen, you make those some type of a controlled amount, make them for a businesses actually affected, because businesses like mine are actually doing better during this crisis. However, there are businesses that are struggling, and a simple $6,000 or $10,000 loan, zero interest loan, would do them wonders. And rather than spend the money as a grant, I've always said live and die by the grant. There are businesses that would take on a 0% interest loan and possibly pay the city back so the taxpayers are not out those funds. Again, just a suggestion. And in watching our money, real quickly, I think we need to be careful. I don't know where the lawsuit is at with the city of Dalton, but I understand we're paying $120,000 for a walkway bridge now, where Dalton was originally willing to split that cost at $60,000. Again, if that's true, if that's the case, we lost that lawsuit. That's another $60,000 out of our funds that we don't have. And again, we need to consider future projects like I've talked about before. Just again, my opinion as a citizen, we have Duncan Plaza. We've got $250,000 of city funds on the line there. And I think we need to relook at that because again, that's not something we may think it needs to be done. But as a citizen, I do not believe it is a must to be done. And that's all I have to say. And I appreciate you allowing me time.
Anyone else for public comment?
Yes,
Go ahead, sir.
this is Randall Irwin, 1212 Williams Avenue Northeast. First of all, I'd like to say with Mr. Reiser, I about took out the dog that he's probably talking about. They had it out running around on Reservoir Drive, and I almost ran it over because it ran in front of me. But my other question is, what specific laws, I mean, I don't know if you guys have talked about this on other meetings, but what specific law is there that says that we can't open up every business right now?
In town, that would be an order from the state of Ohio, and all cities are subject to the laws of the state.
Okay, but what actual law? I mean, I know there's executive orders, but there's not technically an actual law, is there?
Mr. Richard, this seems like this is something up your alley.
Absolutely. I didn't know we were doing question and answer, but I can give you a brief.
Well, I was just going to say, are you available for a phone call tomorrow if this gentleman would want to call you, and if so, can you provide him with that phone number?
Absolutely. It is 330-830-1817.
Did you get that, Mr. Irwin?
830-1817.
1817. That's correct, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And Mr. Richard is our law director for the city of Massillon. So the question you're asking is definitely within the legal scope. So he would be our best person to be able to give you a good answer.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, because I'm sorry, I just don't understand why we just don't open up because of, in my opinion, they're reporting all these fake deaths. They say people die with instead of from the virus, and, all the information that I've encountered online from different doctors and everything, there's hardly anything different than the regular flu except for the people that have comorbidities. So, to me, I'm at a loss along with a lot of other people. But every place I've gone, any business I've gone into, I've been out almost every single day, and every single business I've gone to, even after everything that's been enacted, there's not really a lot of people that even do the social distancing thing. They walk right by you and go, "Excuse me." So, whatever. Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment? All right, well, then that'll be all we have for this evening. Our next meeting's on Monday. Have a nice evening.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Good night.